Hello everyone. If we could settle down, we'll probably get started right now. Thank you all for coming for this diversity session. I just wanted to quickly introduce myself. I'm Shivani, a fourth year majoring in molecular engineering and chemistry with a minor in architecture. I am this year's co-president for the Society of Women Engineers, and I'm planning on applying to grad school for material science this year. We'll see how that goes. But today we'll be discussing diversity, equity, and inclusion topics as it relates to the workplace. We are so honored to have Dean Matt Terrell here, Dean of the Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering, who will help us provide some opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I probably don't need this, but I'll use it anyway. Thank you for inviting me. I recognize that today is about the marketplace for jobs and filling it in the appropriate ways. You know, engineering, and you know, I'm the dean of University of Chicago's first ever engineering school that started in 2011. And we've grown to have about 300 graduate students and classes of undergraduates that are now moving up toward 50 a year. So we've gone from 0 to 50 in a decade. And engineering is different from the sciences in that largely we faculty members are not aimed like science professors at reproducing ourselves, but rather have people go off campus and work for a living in real jobs and you know, carry technology forward and new ideas into places that can make products and really improve society. I'm not putting down education. Obviously, there's a place for engineering education. That's what I've done my entire life. But what I am really trying to get across is that we are really interested in this interface between the campus and the world of technology outside of the campus. So you're meeting with representatives of companies today. This afternoon is devoted to diversity and equity and inclusion, and that's a very important thing within the Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering and within the workplace everywhere. Within PME, we have quite an active diversity, equity, and inclusion committee that includes me as the chair, and we have a vice dean for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and the committee includes faculty, staff, postdocs, graduate students, and undergraduate students. So we get together once a month and talk about things, mentoring programs that we have. We always, every month, do a reading that somebody brings to the committee about some issue in diversity, equity, and inclusion. So we're trying to, you know, make sure that we're well informed about the important thinking about these matters. But, you know, our main job is to help students educate themselves and educate themselves about the desirability of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I'll emphasize diversity to start with, because that's really the root of a lot of creativity and innovation. You know, it's anathema in any kind of organization to have everybody think alike or look alike or do the same things. Diversity brings an element of creativity and innovation that nothing else can. And of course, at a place like University of Chicago, we come from not just all around the country, but all around the world. And that really is a rich source of innovation and innovative thinking. So we do our best to provide opportunities with equity and inclusiveness. We have, like I said, mentoring programs, research experiences for undergraduates, and other programs where we actively seek out people from all kinds of backgrounds and all sorts of racial and ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds. So we're doing what we can. I think in a certain sense, it's never enough. And that's why, it pays to have sessions like this, to hear what people, like I said, who work for a living, think about these things, and enrich our own understanding of how these things play out when students move into careers, which is the rest of your lives. So this is a really important topic, and I'm happy that you're doing this, and thank you to our guests on the panel for doing this, and I'll let you get to it.
Thank you so much. Now I would just like to introduce our panelists today, starting with Hannah. So Hannah Thompson is the Engineering Development Program Engineer at BD. She leads two of BD's R&D rotational programs, the Engineering Development Program and Software Development Program. Hannah has been with BD for over 24 years in R&D, is currently leading a group of engineers who design and develop minimally invasive surgical instruments, along with her role.
That was actually Joe.
Sorry?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Joe was our previous speaker. That's his. No worries.
I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
Would you like to actually introduce
Sure.
yourself? Then?
Yeah.
Yeah. This is what I was given. I'm really sorry.
No, not your
24
fault.
years.
Yeah, I was like,
I'm looking real good for 45. Hello. So I'm Hannah Thompson. I am in the Engineering Development Program. I'm in my second rotation. So I got a bioengineering bachelor's from the University of Illinois, and I have done a rotation in North Carolina, and now I'm out in San Diego. And I'm also the chapter leader for San Diego for our Open Associate Resource Group, which is our Out and Proud Employee Network, our LGBT group. So,
thank you. We're gonna hope the rest of these are accurate. Next, we have Aisha Ibrahim, senior electrical engineer at Fermilab, who grew up in Houston, Texas, and graduated from Illinois Institute of Technology with a Bachelor's of Science in Electrical Engineering. She joined Fermilab's instrumentation department in the Accelerator Division in 2002. Currently, she's developing beam current monitor systems, AI, and spill regulation. She also is serving as a member to the EDI Task Force and SWE Executive Board. Thank you. Next, we have David Jones, the CEO and co-founder of Lumena Energy. He received his Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the Juilliard School and his MBA from MIT. Lumena Energy is a Chicago-based software company with a focus on peer-to-peer energy sharing within virtual power plants. David is a technologist and polyglot with a background in software engineering. And lastly, we have Dr. Adrian DeFonte, senior scientist at Hollister. He has a Bachelor's of Science in Chemical Engineering from the University of Cincinnati, a Master's in Chemical Engineering from the University of South Florida, and has received his doctoral degree from the University of Akron in polymer science. He has 15 years of experience in academic, industrial, and government research environments. So thank you all today for coming. I would like to start us off with some questions and then open it up to the audience in a bit. Sorry, there's one mic, but no, we're pass it on. But firstly, do you guys want to kind of introduce what each of your company does before we get started?
sure. Yeah, so if you were here before, you heard a little bit about Becton Dickinson. We're one of the largest medical device manufacturers in the world. We make something like 15 billion disposable products every year, everything from syringes and pen needles to catheters. But then we also make really large equipment, so like diagnostic equipment. If you've ever used a flow cytometer, we make those. So we really cover a whole wide range of products, everywhere from the hospital to the home setting to laboratories as well. So tons of different opportunities in different fields. Very big company, but we're very passionate about healthcare.
Hi again, I'm Aisha. I work at Fermilab, which is a high energy physics department, a research laboratory in the suburbs. the basic, you probably heard of our famous Tubotron experiment where we discovered the Higgs boson. We're now, that experiment has ended, and we're now transitioning into a new era where we're planning on delivering 2 megawatts of power to a new superconducting LINAC line.
Hello again, once again. My name is David Jones, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Lumen Energy. We are an energy as a service platform that constructs virtual power plants. For those who are wondering, a virtual power plant is essentially a decentralized methodology of transferring power from one end to another, as opposed to just having a ComEd that just sends you energy and you pay money for it. Subsequently, we also have a workforce development program called Lumen Energy Academy. We have our chief engineer here as well as our esteemed head teacher. We focus on renewable energy training within solar panel installs as well as virtual power plant technician program. And we are the first to offer that program in the United States.
So my name is Adrian. I work for a company called Hollister, which is in Libertyville, which is about 40 miles north of Chicago. We are an ostomy and continence care company, so we make medical devices. So if you're not familiar with somebody that's an ostomate, they have a diversion in the intestine, and we have a waste collection device, and so we work on that. And so in my role, I'm a senior scientist, so I work on new product development, but lately I've been working on a lot of innovation and building an ecosystem for like innovation across the universities, across the Chicagoland area, trying to come up with new ideas of how we make money, but we also want to help people too, so that's really important.
So as Dean Terrell was talking about how important diversity and inclusion is, I would like to start us off with the question, what do you feel are the benefits of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace? And if you want to just start from that end and move the mic down.
I think Dean Terrell did put it best about like getting different thought processes. So I think one of the things for me coming like a little bit more academic is the idea about when you publish papers, if everyone's familiar with publishing paper, you get a lot of people that give you different perspectives about your work. One of the things I really enjoyed is actually thinking about people's thought processes and why they think that my work is not good enough, and for me to figure out a way to actually angle and pitch to convince them that it is good enough. And so the thing about diversity and inclusion is like you don't have to absorb all the perspectives, but you do have to take them in and kind of figure out how do you position yourself and how do you relate to them itself. So there's one thing is to taking something in, and then how you respond is the second part, right? So I think about the motivation about diversity and inclusion is just being able to listen and being able to hear.
So I think there are 3 core tenets that are incredibly important among society, and I think that we as a society only focus on 2 of them. So number 1 is IQ. You need to know that a person that you're hiring is competent. The next is EQ, to know that a person has the emotional quotient high enough to deal with other people and to be able to articulate themselves. But most importantly, that's left out is cultural IQ, which is incredibly important. I see such a diverse group of people out in the audience today. It's important that we focus on being able to bring out the best in society. There are so many, I'm going to just use an old adage of a rose in a concrete jungle that exist among us that have never had the chance to really get their ideas out. And unfortunately, most of the greatest ideas go to the grave with us because we are just underrepresented, especially as minority communities, and it's up to us as employers to be that guiding light and to be sort of a beacon to change what that narrative looks like.
Just to add to what my colleagues have said here, you know, Fermilab is a very collaborative environment. It's a great combination of academia and industry and R&D, and it's multi-generational too. You have people that have been at the lab for maybe 50, 60 years, right? And they're still willing to attend your meetings, give their presentations, give their knowledge to you. But then it's also international. And all these perspectives all come together, and it synergizes to not only solve problems, but it also lends to new questions that continually drive more experience and more passion in STEM. And that's really can only be achieved when you really have a diverse and inclusive environment. The other thing, that I've learned is that, when we publish papers at Fermilab or present work, there's usually one spokesperson, right? But it's really a team that build that. And if you don't have the right workforce environment, you don't have that humanistic perspective that will give you a healthy work environment to make it productive and resilient to carry on for future endeavors.
So I think when you're looking at R&D and you're designing products, it's really important that the team that's working on the products reflects the potential population or the customers that you're trying to serve. And this comes up in a lot of different ways. So we had a project where we work on medication dispensing cabinets, and the main target audience is nurses, which the vast majority of nurses tend to be women. And the team that was originally working on the project was made up of all male engineers. And so when they were working on the display screen, they ended up making it so that when you modulate the display screen, it takes a lot of force to move it. And none of them saw any issues with this until one female engineer joined the project and was like, this is ridiculous. Like, no nurse is ever gonna wanna put this much energy into moving something they have to do all the time. So it's that sort of thing where the customers that you're looking at, they have diverse sets of needs, so you need to have a diverse set of people working on these projects in order to fully encompass those. So there's definitely a product-facing aspect, but then being able to see yourself reflected in the people that you work with and in a diverse group of people, not only at your level, but also throughout the ranks of the company, I think it tends to give you like motivation and makes you think that, I could attain that level if I get to that point, So there's a lot of different benefits to having diversity at all levels of leadership within companies.
Yeah, thank you.
Can I add one more thing?
Oh, yeah.
It was a great point that she brought up, and I guess I kind of glossed over what I really wanted to say. Working in technology, there are a number of inherent biases that are affecting society, and as a person of color, one of those main talking points today is artificial intelligence, and how ultimately a product is designed by an engineer who oftentimes may be very stubborn in understanding what the topography is, and if you don't have that diverse voice, you'll be missing out on something that could potentially cost lives. So if you look at what Tesla's dealing with right now, a lot of their technology for automated cars and automated driving revolves heavily around cameras. Now, at night, for a darker skinned person, you can understand where the issue might lie in having someone that is not working on a machine learning or any sort of algorithmic thinking to become part of that processes and helping to mitigate that. So it's just an incredibly important thing to have multiple voices that can voice those concerns before they get to production.
Wow, yeah, it's super clear how important diversity is. And something you guys mentioned is diversity in teams itself. So I was wondering, could you guys talk about what strategies you use for developing these innovative, diverse teams in your companies?
Well, we're a startup, so we're still in early stage, but I think a lot of what we do is heavily rooted in diversity and just making sure that the products that we develop can be, number one, developed by people who need them based upon a topographical or cultural need. As I said, we do work in virtual power plants, and every single virtual power plant is completely different based upon where you live. So working in sub-Saharan Africa could have a completely different effect than living in, for instance, Florida, where people are now currently underwater. I think that also in creating internship programs, which we're currently recruiting for now, it helps us to get a diverse portfolio of candidates who bring a number of thoughts to the table on a project that we're going to be building out in the next couple of years. but it's just incredibly important as a startup company to start scouting that major talent. Everyone, of course, wants unicorns, and that can only be achieved by establishing some form of communication with the people that will eventually be helping to build out this legacy.
I guess in terms of strategy, so our company has a DEI, DEI working group that's trying to figure out like how to define these metrics. But I think the more important part is that the conversation is actually taking place. One thing that I didn't mention about our company is 100 years old. And so you can imagine that there's some kind of very systemic things that have been brought along in place throughout the years. So I will say it's like our company is very, has a very male-oriented culture, I guess, in the sense that because there's a lot of engineers that they've hired that are male. But those things do change, and I think the important thing about my company is that these founding principles about these principles and values of making sure that the dignity of the person is important, not only for our end users, but for our associates as well. And so keeping that in mind, we try to keep mindful of like how we treat each other. And so those things and that kind of culture and that kind of belief kind of is growing out in terms of like how do we hire, how do we look at each other, how do we interact with each other. So those are the important things in terms of strategy of what we're doing. And so I think the conversation is starting. And I think the other thing I'm mindful of is that the conversation will always be ongoing. There is never a place. There's never a place where you say, oh, we're there. Because it's a continual amount of work that you have to do over and over and over again and be cognizant of it. So that's the strategy, is to actually keep at it. Not necessarily thinking that we're there eventually, but to be mindful that we need to keep doing the things that we're doing to include everybody.
So I think in the last, so I've been at Fermilab for 20 years, and there's definitely been a shift in how we recruit and engage with people. And I think one thing that's come up recently is being intentional and being transparent. And so we intentionally are more selective about what events, what recruitment events, what conferences we go to, so that we are looking for the rose in the jungle. And so we end up going to maybe non-traditional events that we had gone to in the past, conduct interviews on campus at local universities. We also started an EDI task force, which is a way that we've thought to bridge the gap. It allows certain lab resource group and diversity people that are interested in leading DEI initiatives to sort of put forth proposals, meet with senior leadership from the bottom up, and then also have a way so that senior leadership can talk to those people without sort of flooding like the all hands listserv. And so we're just trying to bridge the gap so that there'll be a communication path from the concerns at the bottom, and also knowledge about what things are happening at the top, so it's not so all smokes and mirrors.
I feel like a lot of us have a lot of the similar initiatives going on because those are the best practices, right? Like this is where the industry is moving. It's moving to become more, well, not this industry, all industries are moving to become more inclusive. So we also are looking at our recruiting and seeing if we can go to HBCUs, if we can go to conferences like O4U, which is out for undergrad. So it's the LGBTQ conferences. We do things like our program has blinded resumes, so we take the names off of the resumes when we're assessing them to try to remove bias. So that's on the recruiting side, but then we're also doing things like looking at our succession planning process. So that's how you take people in leadership roles and you plan for when they inevitably leave their role. If they get promoted, if they leave the company, or if they make a lateral move, you then have a vacancy. So who do we bring in to fill that role, and how do we ensure that it's a diverse group of people that are prepared for that? And so there are steps that you have to take at all levels of the company, from recruiting entry level all the way up to the top. And I think that, Adrian, you said it, that it's important just to have intentionality and to be thinking about these things and having these conversations. And I know that it seems like all of us are in that place right now.
For sure. thank you guys for speaking about your initiatives and just the action that your companies are taking. In general, do you guys have any advice for maybe someone who's going or entering a company that is not as focused on DEI initiatives, and just how do you navigate an environment like that?
I would say that anyone can make a difference, and it can be small. It can be anything from, like, if you're looking for interns, like even if you're finding one intern, you could make an effort to find a diverse pool of candidates for that process. You could start an employee resource group. So we have a couple different affinity groups for, so I'm in Open, the LGBT one. We have the African Americans at BD, Asian American Associate Group, all sorts. But those started from somewhere. A lot of them came up in the last couple of years, and they started with 1 or 2 people at a site. So you can start these programs if that's something that you're passionate about. And I will say there are probably people in organizations that are also interested in the same things that you are that may not have stepped up yet. And so if you were to say, I want to do this, I want to start this program, there are probably a number of people who would be willing to join you in that. So I would just say, speak up if you feel passionate about something.
I would recommend joining a mentorship program or finding an ally. And I think one thing you have to remember is that it's very natural to want to gravitate to an ally or mentor that is a lot like yourself. But sometimes if you're an organization that isn't diverse or inclusive, you need that other perspective. And you need to be open to consider maybe that mentor or ally may be different than you or come from a different background than you. I come from very different, classes of minority, so to speak, and one thing that I've learned over the years is that there's a lot of intersection and a lot of patterns with a lot of different groups. So you don't necessarily have to find a mentor or ally that's exactly just like you, and sometimes it's even better in a more fuller perspective when it's not.
So I think, and they all make very good points, but this, just to relate back to what was said earlier about intentionality, everything that we do within diversity, equity, and inclusion has to be intentional. So I think taking both a top-down and bottom-up approach of understanding that only upper management can make these sweeping changes. However, from a bottom-up perspective, only the employees are the ones who can propagate this message and communicate what their issues actually are. So once upper management and other employees can meet in between, that's when real synergy happens.
I'm going to be really blunt here. I said if you're looking for a job and you're not comfortable and it doesn't fit into your profile, don't take it. I mean, there's a lot of things out there in the world, right? And you can make a lot of difference, right? But the one thing they have to look for is if the culture is actually susceptible to actually incorporating these ideas. You're worth too much to have to figure out, do I have to fight this fight alone and do I have to do it all by myself? You can go to so many other places that can recognize your talents and the things that you're good at, right? So always remember that, right? You do have a choice. And say if you don't have a choice in terms of I do need to get ahead and I need to take this position for various reasons. It's complicated. We all take jobs for various reasons, not just because it's a high-paying job, okay? So just remind yourself okay, I'll do this for a little bit, right? I don't have to fight the big fight here. I can do a little bit, and then I can move on, right? So you're not tied to that position forever. So, I mean, the most realistic thing is that I would have caution about thinking these kinds of things. And there's other places where your talents can be served to change the direction of something. But if you really feel like somewhere caution and blinkers are going off, don't take it. You don't have to.
And also, just to snowball what Adrian said, I think right now we're in the age of startups. So what used to be homogenous cultures that were very difficult to change is something completely different that exists now. I think that we millennials have begun to sort of architect a dynamic that if you don't like something, you can either fix it from the bottom or you can go and create your own company. And that's one thing that has not really been discussed thus far. is if you don't feel comfortable in a corporate environment, very much like myself, I hated corporate. I never want to take a job working for someone else, but I know that I have a lot of ideas that can change the world, and all I have to do is surround myself with other compelling, brilliant minds that can help to make that vision a reality. So if you don't want to work in an environment that, you're just basically punching a clock, create something. I'm not saying it's going to be easy, but nothing that's worth having is ever going to be easy. But if you don't try, then you'll never know. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that was necessary to be heard for sure. I just wanted to open the floor to the audience. Do you guys have any questions? Yep.
I guess I have a question. I know you guys do a lot of diversity, hiring people. I'm wondering if you guys have any outreach programs you do, maybe to younger people in high school, middle school, to get them interested in what you guys are.
Yeah, so Fermilab has several outreach programs. We have internships even for high school students, graduates, undergraduates, and graduates. We also have a science center so we do regular outreach to high school. In fact, that's sort of what got me in the process. I have 4 kids, and they asked me to present, and then the Science Center learned I present, and it just sort of organically became part of it. But yeah, Fermilab has a big science outreach program.
I will say, I went to the Fermilab program in high school, because I'm from the suburbs, and it's very cool to see. But yeah, we also do high school outreach, university outreach. We go to a lot of universities and work with their student organizations. We bring high schoolers onto our campus and show them our devices. So we have something we call our safety center, which is like a mock hospital setup that shows how all of our equipment is used. And we'll bring students in, show them around, show them how the devices work. So yeah, definitely very interested in getting students interested in STEM, particularly from underrepresented groups. So I'm in San Diego, so a lot of that tends to be this Hispanic community there. But that tends to be the case across the company, across the US. They have similar programs for high school students.
So as I said before, we are not quite as established as my colleagues, but we do have the Empower Initiative, which was established on the south side of Chicago, not too far from here, where we first originated. We started in Inglewood, in part of a TIF district, and I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's basically a district that is zoned for federal dollars to be infused in organizations like mine that help to deal with underdeveloped communities and other types of, I guess, hyper-local environments and situations. So being able to do that, it created a kind of like a perfect storm, if you will, with Lumen Energy Academy, where we're able to go and speak at local high schools and then also bring solar panels or other types of modules that we've created and kind of create a pipeline, if you will, from dealing with children and then going up to an internship level that starts at 18 and then going up to a level where we can have the discussion of employment or connecting with some of our superiors or our other people in our industry. So I think that kind of having this pipeline, it really enables small startups like well, we're not small, but startups like ours to really tap into the proverbial vein, if you will.
I would say nothing completely formal, but I would say it's kind of like a responsibility and kind of like a way of life. I don't know, part of the enterprise of being a scientist is actually closing your work, and that means sharing it to other people, because it doesn't really mean anything. So I think it's just kind of like a behavioral sense that I just naturally do it, to try to explain to people about science, whether it be my nieces and nephews, whether it's, I volunteer for a program called Chicago Scholars, where these high school students are trying to figure out how to go to college for the first time. Fortunately, I have collaborations with the National Academy of Sciences, so I have this YouTube show called Chemists in the Kitchen, and so I collaborate with other scientists to try to explain the chemistry of cooking. So it's kind of all these outreach programs that maybe you're not formalized, but it's just kind of like a behavior that just shows itself up, because I know in order to get the satisfaction for the work that I do, I need to close it and I need to send it out. And so that's just the way I view things. So I think by just even doing this is actually part of that enterprise.
That was a great question, thank you, and some fantastic responses. I think it's super important to kind of foster that confidence as early as possible, middle school, high school. It's definitely just, it leads into the workforce, so super important. Does anyone else have any questions? Yeah, for sure.
As college students, are there opportunities for us to help your companies with like student outreach for high schoolers and below?
That's a good question, actually. Yes, I would say that there is. So, especially if there's like a student organization, I have a very specific example actually. So, there's a student org at UCSD that does this thing where they have these like little boxes of like electronics. It's like a Raspberry Pi and stuff, and then they take it to high schools, and they have like, it's like a kind of Girls Who Code thing, but it's like for electronics. And so we are gonna work with their organization and like help fund and donate some boxes, and then go with them to high schools to go run this program. So the answer is yes, that if that's something that you're interested in, I would reach out to companies that you think you would like to partner with and be like, this is my student organization and here's what our goals are. I would definitely always approach a company with like a specific list of things that you want to accomplish, and be like, we're interested in this, would you be willing to partner with us or work with us on this and sponsor, because it's good for the company and then it's also good for you if you can have funding for that. So yes, definitely do that.
So Fermilab became a corporate member of the Society of Women Engineers and also the National Society of Black Engineers. And so both of these programs have high school chapters, and so we regularly interact with them. So if, for example, they need help with an event, they would just reach out to us and we would provide volunteers or speakers or presentations. Sometimes they're going to competitions and they need judges or advisors, and we do it that way. So it's very interactive. So we work through our LRG groups to make that connection.
I think agency has always been sort of the big motivator for companies like ours. When it comes to dealing with students, what I think is most important is just being able to partner with organizations like the University of Chicago. We're actually fostering a new type of internship program now where we'll be able to specifically work on a project that is very hands-on. I can't really give too much away right now, but the idea is for not to just have some sort of a virtue signaling like, hey, we're dealing with the Black and brown community, or we're not just bringing in, no offense, not just bringing like a box of supplies, but actually doing something that's hands-on and it is a resume builder. So those types of things are I guess, integral to establishing a relationship and creating sort of a public education piece that enables people like yourself to understand what's going on in the real world and to see how agents like myself are acting in our industries.
I don't know if anything's formal again, so I keep thinking about, like, again, it's behaviorally. So my colleague Abe and I do a lot of collaborations with universities, and so one of the important things is we try to showcase those students. And so we are involved at the Pritzker School of Molecular Engineering doing senior design projects, but this isn't the only school. We have actually 3 other schools that we do. And so one of the things that we've been able to do is pull a symposium together, and actually you can see the different types of diversity that are in the students as a result of them sharing their work. And so what's really nice is that we get this crosstalk amongst universities working on these kind of innovation statements of work. And so that's one way to do it. But I really like that idea that's going on at BD about trying to bring them. So I think we have to think. So I appreciate the idea.
Just to be conscious of time, does anyone have one last question maybe? Otherwise, thank you all for coming. Can we get a round of applause for coming? So there are refreshments if you leave through that door, and there's also an engineering recruiting forum that's happening right outside. Please head out, meet all the employers that are here to kind of speak to students. A lot of them have some internships or roles available for you guys to apply for, so definitely make sure to check those out. And I think our panelists here will stay for a bit longer if you guys want to come up and speak to any of them. But thank you again for coming.